This is our legal and ethical case study.
This particular case involves a young child who has just been admitted into the hospital with issues regarding swallowing. Dysphagia is the medical term for the difficulty of swallowing foods or liquids. The parents of this child did not believe that speech-language pathology services would benefit their child, therefore they declined services. A young SLP in training felt that it was unfair for the child to not receive services that would help treat her disorder. She proceeded to give the child SLP help under the pretense of just visiting her. The young SLP's manager turned a blind eye to the services as she too believed that the child would benefit. However, the SLP was not fully trained in therapy services related to dysphagia. During the administration of services, the SLP gave the child the wrong consistency of liquid, causing the child to choke. Some of the substance entered the child's airway and further penetrated into the lungs. This caused further complications, an infection erupting from the foreign substance in the lungs. The parents were livid that their child now had a lung infection that led to further complications, a longer hospital stay, and additional financial charges. The nursing staff found out the SLP therapy treatment caused the infection and proceeded to inform the young SLP's manager as well as the parents of the child. The hospital administration took action right away to minimize the publicity that these actions received instead of focusing directly on administering treatment to counteract the infection. The administrative board was concerned with potential fines that they could argue from the Department of Health and Human Services as well as the potential lawsuits that could be filed against them.
This case presents many legal and ethical issues regarding the provision of SLP therapy. One legal issue would be not getting consent from the parents. Informed consent must be obtained before any procedures can be performed on a minor. Informed consent is defined as a legal concept that provides that a patient has a right to know the potential risks, benefits, and alternatives of a proposed procedure, according to POSGAR. In other words, the parents were not informed about the SLP treatment that was given to their child and did not authorize it. Not only did the young SLP perform the procedures without proper consent, she also did not have proper certification to perform those procedures. This is an example of malfeasance. Malfeasance is intentional conduct that is wrongful or unlawful, according to Cornell Law School. By performing the SLP treatment without being properly trained, the SLP put the child in danger. The child could have suffocated when she choked on the substance. Instead, she now has a lung infection that could be life-threatening if not properly treated. This lung infection additionally caused a need for further hospital stay, which increased her financial strain on the parents.
In addition to legal issues, there are also several ethical issues wrong with this case. The first one is that the manager of the young SLP turned a blind eye to what was being administered to the child. This means that she was disregarding the ethical principle of non-maleficence, which by allowing the SLP to conduct the treatment. Non-maleficence requires caregivers to avoid causing potential harm to their patients. The SLP caused harm to the child by giving her the wrong fluid because of her lack of training. While the SLP was trying to help the child by performing these actions, she should have had the proper supervision and training. Not only was non-maleficence ignored, deontological ethics was also disregarded. Deontological ethics is duty-based ethics, according to POSGAR. This means that the professional focuses on their duties to others and those individual rights. The child and her parents have the right to deny treatment, which the SLP disregarded. Lastly, the hospital also did not prioritize the issue because they were more concerned about how the SLP's actions would reflect on the hospital as opposed to helping the patient. The hospital administration was concerned with how the DHHS, or the Department of Health and Human Services, would react to the SLP's actions, which could lead to fines and lawsuits. By putting the reputation of the hospital above the proper care of the patients, the hospital administrative staff were guilty of neglecting beneficence. Beneficence is showing compassion and kindness to those, and they were too concerned with their overall reputation, as opposed to the health and wellness of their patient.
Here's a video explaining what the SLP should have done if she had informed consent explaining the procedure to the patient.
For us to do as we've been doing, I just kind of wanted to review again the recommendations for the Vital Stim and why we might use it, or why we are using it. Because of the stroke, that left side is all the muscles on the left side are just not working as well, so they have a really hard time kind of raising up and going forward, which is what our muscles do when we swallow successfully. So using the electrical stimulation, specifically this Vital Stim, helps give you kind of a jump start to your muscles. So what it makes your muscles do is tighten and give them an extra boost for 50 seconds, and then it lets you down. You always feel that up and down, right? Let you down for 10 seconds, with the idea being that we don't want to do anything for, minutes on end. We want to have a break. So if you think about weight training, nobody ever lifts the weight up and just stays up there indefinitely. Nor do they do this, though, either, right? It's a very concentrated movement that they tackle, and then they stop and change that movement. So Vital Stim is kind of geared along towards that thing, and certainly I've seen a fair amount of success in the last 19 years. You had told me before that you felt that it was making a positive difference, like you could feel that it was. So maybe just explain, like when I put the Vital Stim on, how does it feel?
I feel tingly at first, and then you feel like they're pulling the vocal cord.
Okay.
And then it go ahead.
Okay.
It's about time.
And is it easier or harder to swallow when you have it on?
It's easier.
It feels a little easier.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Can you swallow, please? Keep your head level though, chin down a little bit. Good. Definitely a lot stronger than when we met, which is the whole idea, right? All right, I'm going to turn you on. You tell me when you feel the tingling, okay? Now it's tingling, but now we want the pulling and grabbing. So you tell me when you feel it's really lifting. But let's go through a couple of our swallowing exercises, your dysphagia exercises. Let's do the tongue blade one with the Gaga.
Oh, first.
Good. Why don't we try the straw one as well, too? We're going to skip the other ones that would really require a lot of the vocal cord involvement, but the straw is a better one. So same analogy again, right, as a weight training. 2 seconds is a good time to do it because you don't want to do it forever or you'll fatigue the muscle needlessly, but you also don't want to do it just for a half a second because then you didn't work out the muscle. You do, right? Yeah. Was it the idea behind doing the Vital Stim while you're eating? Again, is to give those muscles a little extra jump while you're actually swallowing food. I think we kind of reviewed the importance of turning to the left. You're so good about doing it. But remembering, you saw from the picture on the fees that what it does is it just closes off more of the weak side. So if you were to turn to the right side when you're swallowing, what would probably happen? Yeah, it would, because you would be closing off your good strong side and leaving the other side that's weaker wide open. So yeah, that's why it's so important to turn to the left when you're swallowing. So you're using the stronger muscles more.
As we saw in that video, the SLP really took time to explain to the patient what she was going to do and why the procedure was going to work, how it was going to work. And as she continuously went through the procedure, she reiterated different reasons why it was working and kept explaining things to her so that the patient truly understood what she was doing. She also properly did the procedures so the patient didn't undergo any other medical issues. And the SLP also had informed consent.
Overall, this case poses both legal and ethical issues that a professional would need to consider if they were in this position. Legally, the parents did not give their informed consent for the child to receive SLP services. The SLP was conducting services when she was not properly certified, which is an example of malfeasance. Ethically, the manager had the responsibility to make sure that those under her had proper credentials and training. By ignoring the SLP when she performed treatment with the child, the manager was leaving an opening for harm to befall on the child. Additionally, the SLP was ignoring the rights of the patient and her parents when she disregarded their refusal for treatment. Lastly, the hospital staff were also culpable by their indifference in following the ethical principle of beneficence in their actions after the SLP's actions.
So we believe that several things should be done regarding the legal and ethical issues of this case. First, we think that the manager should be let go. She wasn't performing her supervisory duties and was allowing for probable future harm to befall that patient or any patient that the SLP may have in the future. Additionally, we think that the SLP in training should be let go and that her credential process should be delayed. She should be required to complete further observation hours before being allowed to administer SLP services while in a supervised setting. She should also be required to complete these additional hours before she can obtain her full credentials. So overall, there were a lot of legal and ethical issues that arose in this case. The SLP in training definitely was culpable for a lot of the problems that arose in this case. The manager also was responsible for some of the things that happened. The legal issues that we had, just to recap, were malfeasance and lack of informed consent. And the ethical issues were that the manager of the SLP knew the procedure was illegal to perform, but she didn't take any actions to prevent it. There was also a major ethical issue because the procedure was done and it wasn't performed properly, which led to further complications for the patient. Deontological ethics were also disregarded by the SLP and the manager, and the hospital also ignored the beneficence principle by allowing the fear of fines to impede their ability to give proper treatment to the patient. All of these issues cause a cumulative health care issue for this patient. So overall, we think that healthcare professionals need to be appraised and trained in how to problem solve these legal and ethical issues so that they can better administer care to their patients.
These are a couple of our references. We mostly got our definitions from the book. Thank you for listening.